How would you say has the well, you've said actually there have been some kind of silver lining to the overturning of Roe v. Wade, in the sense that, you know, a lot of people before had no idea that abortion was still criminalized in this country. But yeah, how else is the decision playing out? Obviously you're, you know, on the ground seeing what's going on.
Yeah, and I think it is just worth emphasizing that to people in this event, that abortion is illegal in the United Kingdom. And apologies, because I might, obviously there are different commissioning arrangements in different countries, but it's important to know that there's a criminal underpinning to our abortion law. Under an act passed in 1861, an era that is potentially too modern for Jacob Rees-Mogg, there is a law called the Offences Against the Person Act, under which any woman who ends a pregnancy from the moment a fertilized egg implants into the lining of their womb can face up to life imprisonment. The 1967 Abortion Act did not do anything about that criminal underpinning. What it did was provide legal exemptions. So where women meet certain grounds and where two doctors still have to approve the termination. That is still the case in this country. Any woman who ends their own pregnancy at any gestation without the approval of two doctors, without them contacting an organisation like BPAS, still faces up to life imprisonment. And I think that that's really worth reminding, because certainly, even as somebody that, you know, viewed themselves as a dyed-in-the-wool feminist, until I started working in abortion care, I had no idea. And I think that's kind of a good thing in a sense, because it means that women aren't feeling stigmatized and looking over their shoulders when they access abortion care. But on the other hand, I think that we've become a bit too complacent in this country. And I think that, you know, we've seen recently reports in the Sunday Times about two women who are currently on trial for ending their or attempting to end their own pregnancies. And this Sunday, there was a piece published again in the Sunday Times, who've done incredible work on this, of a young mother who, under duress from her abusive, violent boyfriend, took abortion medication and delivered a stillborn baby, and then was sent to prison for 2 years. And this is where we are. I would say that if it hadn't been for Roe v. Wade, like at BPAS, we've been banging the drum for decriminalisation for a number of years. And there are amazing MPs like Jess, and Diana Johnson has absolutely championed this in Parliament, who've really been trying. But it has been really scary actually going to meetings with senior MPs or ministers and having to explain to them the law that still exists. And I don't think that people understand that. I think that things have changed, certainly in the last couple of years. There were certainly, in response to Roe v. Wade, there were some MPs, I'm not going to name names, who stood up and condemned Roe v. Wade, who I had in my Excel spreadsheet of MPs down as anti-abortion. So I think that something has changed over the last few years. So that's certainly something to be positive about. Although, you know, as Lucy mentioned, in Scotland, we've had an escalation in anti-abortion activity since Roe v. Wade. We can't say it's definitely the case, but we have clinics being targeted, you know, even in, you know, the leafy suburbs of Clapham now, where we're having to call police. And so I do think there is that emboldening going on, definitely.
Thank you, Katherine. Yeah, I'm just curious as to why the situation is so bad in Scotland. I don't know, I should probably know that, but I just, yeah. So, Kaukab, do you want to, tell us a bit about what's going on in Scotland?
So I represent Glasgow Kelvin constituency, and I do have sort of like facilities that unfortunately did have and probably will have protests that went on outside them. So that sort of brought it to my attention as the constituency MSP to sort of ask questions about that, which I did do. But I think sort of like what I see in Scotland is sort of, I mean, we have a very feminist FM, who is on record as that, and she is absolutely for women's rights and is on record as that. So we have had debates and discussions, many questions. I, in fact, when the Roe versus Wade sort of decision came, I did actually put a question to our minister regarding whether we would be able to help any women that were looking for abortion services coming over from the US. So I got assurances from our minister regarding that as well. So I think, I mean, we have at the moment in Scotland an SNP Green cooperation agreement. So I think that we do have sort of like a general cross-party consensus about the protection of women's rights. And, you know, I'm there. That's what I see. We also have a Minister, Marie Todd, who has got as part of her portfolio is actually women's healthcare. And we've produced, well, she has produced a women's health plan, and reproductive rights sort of comes under that as well. When all the discussion sort of like brought it into sort of our mind and we were focused on it, the First Minister called a summit. And I think some of the organisations that are here tonight were attending that, and it's been referred to. That was a really useful day. So we were able to hear about experiences from across the 4 nations. And we were able to look at the implications and the difficulties of implementing buffer zones. I think we got an example from Ealing. They were able to give us insight into how they managed that as well. And after that, the First Minister did say that, you know, having listened very carefully, that she was sort of assured that legislation was the way to go. So she has given that commitment that the Scottish Parliament is prepared to look at that. We've also, somebody's already mentioned Gillian Mackay's members' bill that she's putting forward, and that's getting a lot of support as well. So I think that hopefully that will be a positive discussion, although I know that, you know, there's lots of sort of tensions around it. So yeah, that's the situation. I think with regards to sort of like healthcare in general, of course, abortion care, healthcare is provided by the NHS in Scotland, and where they're not able to provide that care, then we are able to use the services of facilities that BPAS provides. But those numbers are very, very small, and I have sought assurances from the Scottish Government, and I have got them, that they're working very hard to look at health boards across Scotland to see what we can do to make sure that we can provide all the services that are necessary right up to 24 weeks. So I'll finish there just now, but obviously I can come back in.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I did a recent story about the fact that, you know, women in Scotland routinely having to travel hundreds of miles to get an abortion, especially for late stage abortions, coming all the way to London. There's just so few services that provide late stage abortions. That's an ongoing problem. It's a long-standing problem.
Yeah, can I come back in on that, Maya?
Yeah.
I did actually sort of consult with clinicians. So I have spoken, because obviously I've got services in my own constituency, and it's a huge concern to me. So those numbers are less than 50 that I've been told. Now, 50 is too many, absolutely. I'm not saying that 50 is anywhere near, you know, what it should be. But those numbers are very small in that sense. And I think we have, I think it's about, what is it, 1,400 or sort of something like that a year of women coming forward for abortions. So I think that although, yeah, we would like to provide everything ourselves and make sure that women aren't having to travel and have it as local as possible, we need to bear in mind that those numbers are maybe not as big as we think they are. We've got to keep that in proportion, I think.
I thought there were just some in Scotland you can't get a late stage abortion, can you?
Well, the discussions that I had with sort of like clinicians in fact, 2-3 days ago, so that was the latest information I had, was that because of, I mean, it is a specialised thing, and I'm not speaking from a medical point of view, as you know, it requires people with great skill, but a lot of the late stage sort of like abortions, they come under other sort of like medical factors as well. So the ones that are remaining are less than 50.
Okay, thank you. And Kate, how are you seeing the overturning of Roe v. Wade being played out?
Well, I mean, women on web get requests from all over the world, as you know, for women who want to access abortion care. And certainly it's always had an increase in numbers of America wanting information on this has dramatically increased with Roe v. Wade, and even the threat of Roe v. Wade coming up. But in a way, women on web haven't taken on America. There's other actors there. So what they do is they post women to reliable providers or trusted providers like Plan C and Aid Access. Aid Access was also set up by the same person who set up Women on Web, totally separate from Women on Web, but it has the same sort of vibe. So yes, demand for information and help has gone up, but Women on Web passes it on to those who can provide and help. Hello? I can't hear you.
Sorry, have you finished now?
Oh, sorry, yes, sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't realise. Okay,
Sorry.
all right, thank you very much. So yeah, some of the key questions that we want our panelists to explore. So I'm just going to start with one of those. So this would be one, well, whoever wants to answer this can. So what impact has the US Supreme Court ruling had here in the UK? Has it exposed the fragility of our abortion rights and reproductive choice that perhaps many weren't aware of before? What are the challenges across Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, England, in the US and across the globe?
Maya, can I just say, I think that we need to hear from Nzingha about you know, the actual situation in America.
Oh God, sorry, I'm so sorry.
It's all right. It's a Zoom. You can't see everybody on the screen.
I know, I can't see everyone. And then I was thinking of, I was just thinking about the situation in Scotland, thinking there must be more women than that. So my head was elsewhere. I'm so sorry. And Nzingha, what's going on in America? That's most important. You know, obviously, you know more than anyone about this.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Nzingha. I use she, her pronouns. I am an abortion doula currently living in the United States South, specifically the state of Georgia. So the United States, as we know, is 50 states. When we're thinking about abortion access and abortion legality, we're looking about, when we're thinking about who has the access to abortion and who doesn't, we're really thinking about sort of the Western states, your Californias, right? That will always have access to that, abortion access, Alaska, et cetera. Your Northeastern states, your DCs, your New Yorks, right? Abortion access is legal. When we're really thinking about who really needs to be able to access the reproductive health services we need, a lot of the states that do not have access right now is the region where I live, the Southeast. Currently, right now, if someone were to get an abortion in Georgia, they would either have to be between the range of, I would say, 4.5 to 6.0 weeks, or 6.0 weeks with no fetal heartbeat. And the next state that they could go to would be Florida. And then after that, it would be North Carolina or Virginia when we're thinking about southern states. So we have this whole region of thousands, not even thousands, millions and millions of people who do not have that fundamental right. Abortion access is an intersectional issue, right? We can't talk about abortion access without thinking about economics, maternal morbidity and mortality, race, gender, et cetera. So in a state like Georgia, where half of counties do not have an OBGYN, right? when we're thinking about the maternal morbidity and mortality rates, where Black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth as opposed to their white counterparts, we have to think about all of these factors related to abortion access and bodily autonomy and self-determination. Abortion access is not just an issue for women. We have to bring in our all of our family. This is gender nonconforming folks, this is trans folks. I know this conversation does talk a lot about women, but I really want to bring in the space that abortion is not just for, you know, cis women. Trans folks have abortions, gender non-conforming folks have abortions too. Thank you. I'm super excited to delve into some of the more issues with y'all.
Thank you so much, Nzingha. So maybe I'll start with you, because obviously, you know, you're far more kind of, knowledgeable about these things due to, you know, work in America. So millions, I'll ask this question, millions of women across the US can no longer access abortion care in their home state, many of who can't afford to travel, might not be able to access legal abortion at all. This reality is true across the globe too. What does taking away reproductive choice do to women, but also our society and democracies?
Thank you so much for that question, Maya. When I think about the revoking of abortion access, I think immediately of self-determination, having the right to choose the healthcare that works best for me. I think about bodily autonomy, and I think about reproductive futures and destinies. We are in grave, grave danger when we put our reproductive destinies in the hands of the state that has historically disenfranchised people that look like me, my friends and comrades who do not identify as white, who do not identify as men, who do not have access to wealth, et cetera, et cetera. It is most important that when it comes to reproductive health and autonomy, it is in the hands of self. That is the most important thing. But we also have to think about the larger picture, right? When we limit abortion access or restrict abortion access, it means that people have to make certain choices about their economic stability. We know that if we have access to abortion, that folks are likely going to have better opportunities for jobs, for healthcare. When we think about people having to travel to different states, childcare, food, all of these sort of things, right? And especially in the wake of climate change, we have to be considerate of the fact that there might be more tornadoes and floods coming, right? And when people are trying to access the healthcare they need, literally may be a roadblock because of our, you know, our carbon emissions are causing all of these natural disasters. This definitely is an intersectional issue. And I think that's what I really want to really just put forth in the space today, that it's an intersectional issue and a global issue. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Very powerful words. Now, maybe it's best for Katherine to answer this. What would you say the biggest challenges for women seeking abortion in the UK right now are, and how does this impact different groups of women?
So I think it's really important to stress, as I know that people have been saying in the chat, that it's quite hard to generalize about the UK, because even though we are a tiny, tiny country by standards, I don't know how many of us could fit in Texas, but it's a lot. We could all fit in there. Thanks, Jess. Geography, your mastermind subject. But yeah, so even though we are a relatively small country, access is very different in different parts of the UK. And I think it's also very different for different women who need abortion care. So for example, the majority of abortions in England and Wales are provided by charities, the not-for-profit sector, organisations like BPAS. We're commissioned by the NHS. So we largely run standalone clinics. We were set up in the 60s because even though abortion was legal, the NHS didn't or couldn't provide it. So that's kind of how it's developed in England and Wales. And so we run standalone clinics, which perfectly safe and suitable for the vast majority of women. However, for those with complex medical conditions, such as uncontrolled epilepsy, diabetes, women with conditions relating to blood clotting, for example, they cannot be treated at standalone clinics. They need to be treated within a hospital facility where there's that swift backup care needed. And unfortunately, we have not seen the investment in the education of clinicians in abortion care, and we haven't seen the investment in abortion services that is so desperately needed. And I know, Maya, this is something that you've touched on, just how much services are really teetering on the edge of being able to provide the care that is needed. For those people who cannot be treated within a BPAS clinic or a standalone clinic by an organisation like BPAS, and we have to refer them into the NHS hospitals, access is decreasing. And one of the, I think, the saddest conversations that I've had with colleagues at BPAS are around women who present well before the 24-week time limit, but we are unable to place them for treatment within NHS facilities. These are women with complex medical conditions for whom continuing the pregnancy presents a really significant risk. Women who are told, we won't do chemotherapy because you're pregnant, and women who've had to make that decision to end a wanted pregnancy so that they can have treatment for cancer, for example. These are women who we can't treat, and every week we see women who we can't provide care for, and for whom continuing a pregnancy is their only option. So I think certainly that there's a sort of an aspect between the different nations of the UK and also different individuals within the UK. And access in rural areas is poor. I know that, you know, we touched on access in Scotland, with, you know, 50 women a year. It's 2,000, I think, since 2010. Women in lots of areas of Scotland can't access telemedical services, and it's wonderful to see, you know, commitment from the First Minister, but actually we're still seeing women travelling as far as London for care that should legally be provided in Scotland. These are women having surgical procedures far away from their homes, far away from their family and friends. So I welcome commitments to improving services, but, you know, there's no reason why it can't be happening right now. And so I think that there's a huge disparity, and certainly a lack of clinicians being trained in abortion care. And the fact that abortion still sits within the criminal law really does deter clinicians from entering this field, because it's unique in that respect. If you are a doctor who signs off an abortion and you don't get a colleague to sign it off as well, and that abortion is performed, you could face criminal sanctions. So, you know, I think that decriminalisation is absolutely part of the solution, because we don't have the workforce at the moment to provide the care that women really need.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Katherine. And Jess, do you feel like there is kind of political will for abortion to be decriminalised in this country? It seems quite unlikely to me, not because I don't wholeheartedly agree with it, but it just doesn't feel like it's the political priority.
Yeah, I mean, it is the political priority, thankfully, of about 4 people in Parliament who, anytime they get any bloody opportunity to do anything, they try and do that. So that isn't enough, though. You need 600. It's certainly not the will of the government to undo it. Necessity is how we change the law in the UK around abortion. It has always been about necessity and hard truths. I think we have to be very, very careful when talking about abortion access, when we delve so heavily into the hardest cases. And I totally agree with everything that Katherine has said. It is about the will to. It's very hard to stand up in Parliament and argue the toss about people who need abortions post 24 weeks. I'm very lucky. I live in Birmingham, that has one of the centres that operates that. I have visited it, and when I went there, they said, "Oh, politicians don't want to come here. They just want to go to the bit where the babies are born in our hospital. Nobody ever wants to talk to these amazing clinicians who are doing brave and difficult and detailed work. And so there is people get very, very squeamish about talking about the difficult end. But I also think we have to be really, really careful that we don't make abortion is a standard healthcare procedure. And I mean, I have had an abortion, and I am one of 3 members of Parliament ever in the history of Parliament to have admitted that. And very, very the other 2 lent on very, very difficult cases for the reasons that they had to have that. And I just made a choice, as is my will, as is my right to make a choice as a woman. And I get very anxious when hard cases make bad laws. We have to try and make sure that we are also talking about something that is totally and utterly regular. But changing the criminal, I think I will see it in my lifetime that it will be taken out of criminal law, because I don't know why I'd be getting up and going to bloody work if I didn't think that was going to happen. And I think that it will be born, like all of the other progress that we've ever seen in our country around abortion, it will be born out of necessity of complete and utter failings of the system. So the system is starting to crumble, and they're going to try and come up with a way to stop the system from crumbling. And some of that necessity will bear out into some more radical change. That's the only reason we have telemedicine in the UK. It is the only reason that we ever really got abortion across the line ever. And I think that we're at that sort of peak with abortion care in the UK at the moment, that it is so stretched that there's going to have to be something done about the 2 doctors thing. And as somebody who had the 2 doctors sign it, one of them barely looked at me. It was genuinely like a sort of, I bumped into him in Sainsbury's the week after. He was in the wine aisle. But you know, it's ridiculous, the idea that it is of no clinical value that I saw 2 different doctors. To me, it was a piece of paper, pencil pushing, and we just don't have the capacity even for that at the moment in the UK.
Thank you, Jess. No, thanks for sharing that. It's very brave. But yeah, no, like you say, it should just be, abortion is so stigmatized. When I wrote the article, we're like, wow, thank you so much. How did you have the guts to do it? But it's just, I personally don't think it's such a big deal to talk about at all. So a question for Nzingha. It's one of those hard questions, so I don't envy you in having to answer this, but it's from Jemima, the head of Fawcett Society. What do American abortion rights activists want from feminists in the UK?
I think the most important thing would be just having that openness and willingness for knowledge sharing. You know, one of the most amazing things that I've done is being able to talk to abortion doulas from across the pond. I think that is I think our communication is, and our support is probably the best thing we can do right now. Kind of like what other folks have said, like we have to bring this, the topic of abortion and normalize it. This is a normal procedure. Abortion access is a health equity issue. And the more we talk about it and the more we have a global conversation about it, the better. When we think about research, and this is just public health research in general, right? We look at studies from around the world, right? So that's no different than when we're talking about the abortion access, right? We're going to see what our comrades in the UK are doing. We're going to be looking at to see what our comrades in Latin America, Africa, Asia, all the continents of the world, Australia, right? We're going to be looking to each other to see, okay, has this worked? What have you all done here? Okay, I like that idea. How about we build on this? How can we even, talk to, I think some of the greatest conversations, especially as being, someone that belongs to the African diaspora, is seeing what my sisters in the UK who are of African descent are doing as well, and really learning from each other as people who are of African descent and how our customs and our traditions are different and the same. So I believe, really just advocating with each other, following each other on Twitter and Instagram, boosting each other up and supporting each other, because this is a global issue, and together I think we can work together to normalize it.
Thank you so much. So many questions. I can't ask them all. I'm just thinking. Oh, this is interesting. Yeah, what does everyone think? I'm just going to ask the question first and work out who's best to answer afterwards. Maybe this would be good for Kate, because you're more from like a global perspective. What does everyone think of a recent Spanish ruling that doctors have to document their views on abortions, and those who are anti-abortion do not have to sign off on abortions and or conduct the procedure? What this seems to achieve is to keep everyone who is against abortion out of the healthcare. I didn't know anything about this.
Well, I presume that's Spain coming into line with the UK, because here, if you don't want to, if you're a medic or a nurse, if you don't want to take part in abortion care, you don't. I mean, and I think that's actually very right. Nobody should have to perform abortions they don't want to. But those of us who are very happy to perform abortions to be allowed to get on with it, because it's a method of healthcare. But I mean, you could wonder if and I don't know where Spain was before. Is this just the beginnings of the empowerment of the anti-abortion lobby? I mean, we look to, it's Sweden, and Sweden absolutely from the get-go, day one, made abortion accessible and said every doctor will deliver whether they like it or not. So different countries took a different approach, but Spain appears to be shifting the approach the UK's had all along. But I mean, from the women on web perspective, I mean, that's why we have the number one women web is advocacy. It's like, if you want help, we'll give you help. It's unbiased. And we'll send you information and advice over who to go to, who will give you what you want for your requirements, because it's your choice. And we trust women. We trust women to tell us the truth. And we do get women, I mean, from the UK, we get requests from Britain, infinitely less. Well, now, there's telemedicine, because a lot of it's about, particularly where it's legal, it's about stigma. It's stigma that stops people from accessing care, where care is available, and embarrassment. And when you see women with the UK, yes, there's abortion is remarkably accessible compared to most of the world, but it still doesn't fit all women because of that individual woman's individual circumstances. So, I mean, decriminalisation, easy open access, which removes stigma, is a must. And I suppose just thinking about what you're saying about Spain, what it's doing is upping the whole stigma thing, because it means that you may go to your local doctor now who says, oh, well, who gives the local doctor the permission to tick you off and make you feel really bad about yourself because you want to access abortion. So that's a really retrograde step. That would be my view of it.
Yeah, just to come in there, I think there's also a thing about, there's an issue with conscientious objection around how that can so severely limit access, when actually it's almost just an opt-out. I don't fancy doing this. And we see this in Italy with certain areas where there are vast swathes of the country where apparently all clinicians have a conscientious objection to providing abortion care. And actually, it's just a bit of an opt-out. And, at BPAS, we absolutely support all a clinician's right to conscientiously object, although I would say all our clinicians are there because of their conscience. It's not just those who refuse to provide abortion that have a conscience. We provide abortion care because our conscience tells us to. But I think that there is a danger where, that becomes sort of shrouded in just a bit of an opt-out. But I did want to bring in Naomi back from Alliance for Choice, if I can, and just to talk about, because the sort of experience in Northern Ireland, I think it's such a testament to, you can have legislative change, but actually it doesn't necessarily mean, you're going to have the provision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in Northern Ireland, there was much, and a lot of you will have followed this, in 2019, it was lauded that abortion had been decriminalised. And of course, that was really, really important. But we still had sort of weighty anti-choice lobby, which in the executive and the government of Northern Ireland really, really overplayed its hand. And what that means is we don't have commission services in Northern Ireland. Now, commissioning is just a word, but in essence, what it means is there's no central access point for abortion provision. Anyone with barriers to any type of healthcare will automatically find it difficult to access abortion. There is no telemedicine in Northern Ireland. We don't have telemedicine. They have still refused to provide it. And what they're saying to women and pregnant people is, we don't trust you, you know, to take one pill at home, one extra pill at home, but we're going to trust you to continue a pregnancy. It's just ridiculous. And it's just another way of creating barriers in and around it. Healthcare workers are definitely part of this, in that they are not, central governance is not being provided with commissioning, and there's no funds, no extra funds, despite the fact 1 in 3 women or pregnant people have abortions in Northern Ireland. I think one of the concerns in and around, I'll just finish very quickly, in and around the Supreme Court decision, if it doesn't go our way, that's sending a message to the anti-choice lobby that it's okay to harass women and pregnant people just because they're having abortions and they're going for abortion healthcare. And we can't forget the othering of abortion healthcare. You know, there was an anti-vax lobby recently in the UK news, and there was outrage about them storming a hospital because of that. Because of, you know, the way they treated healthcare workers and patients in the hospital. Women and pregnant people have to run that gauntlet every single day, and there's no outcry about it.
Can I just ask, are doctors in the United Kingdom, for example, not allowed? Because I went to my GP and he said, I'm sorry, I don't sign off on abortion. And you'll have to go and see the other person from the surgery. Like, there's the woman who'll do it at this surgery. So I went to her and she signed my form. Like, he was more than happy just to say that to my face. I wasn't a member of Parliament at the time. Had I been, I'm not sure he would have been. Would that same doctor, on the same basis, be able to not give PrEP to a gay man, for example? Would that not be a question under the Equality Act, that you can't not treat somebody because they're gay on the basis of your conscientious objection?
It's interesting. So conscientious objection with abortion, and it all sort of, let me just bring it back to decriminalisation, but because it's, you know, it is tied up within a specific act of Parliament, that, you know, the right to conscientiously object is there for abortion in a way that potentially isn't. I think there is some interesting work being done around pharmacists, who of course can object to providing emergency contraception, which isn't an abortion. And I do believe that there were some issues with pharmacists refusing to provide certain treatments for trans individuals. But I mean, I don't think that if a GP refused to provide or refer for PrEP, we would stand for it.
No.
And I think that's one of the things that, you know, I find so frustrating, is that whenever we have a discussion about abortion, which is part of women's healthcare, if you talk to, you know, if you're on, you know, the BBC, for example, other channels are just as bad, but they always balance it with somebody who fundamentally disagrees with a woman's right to choose. But yet we can absolutely and should celebrate the provision of PrEP without there needing to be somebody on the other side of the debate talking about how gay sex is a sin, you know, and that's a huge frustration. And it really shows how abortion is still seen as this controversial issue, when, as you know, it's been repeated so many times in this, the majority of people support women's right to choose. 1 in 3 women will have an abortion. It isn't controversial, but it's the framing of it that makes people think that it is, if that makes sense.
Can I just come in? I think, there is a real issue with the media. I am actually proud to say I don't do this. I would never, you know, give the pro-life lobby lots of airtime. But there is an issue, because I think it's 9 in 10 identify as pro-choice in this country. So it's an overwhelmingly pro-choice country. And yet sometimes some elements of the media will frame the debate like it's almost like half and half, which feels quite kind of, just not reflective of the reality of the situation. But I'm just someone's asked, are there any other medical issues clinicians are able to do that with, you know, like opt out of? I don't think there are.
I mean, you cannot specialise in them,
No, but
that's
I mean,
not like a will.
objection. That's what I mean. I mean, yeah.
No, but I think it is interesting when there's, I mean, you know, this is just sort of a wider issue around sort of women's healthcare. You have the right to ask for a cesarean section, but you can be denied it. You know, I think there is a sort of a very patriarchal view of women's ability to ask for medical interventions that they fundamentally know are right for their own bodies, but are denied by a medical profession. So I think that, but it's about the legal or the right to conscientiously object that is very unique to abortion care.
Someone's actually, Jess from someone said this to Jess, someone who works for the GMC. I can't work out who the name, but yeah, there is specific guidance about what treatment doctors can give and refuse to give. And then she says, if you email their ethical inquiries team, they can give you a detailed answer to your question. But I'll just throw through more questions. Kaukab, I need to ask you something. Sorry, was someone?
So I was just going to say that it's not uncommon for pharmacists to refuse to provide emergency contraception. It's all about sex. And just briefly Googling, it's and it's a GMC. You can doctors, this GMC, can choose to opt out providing a particular procedure because of your personal beliefs and values, as long as this does not result in direct or indirect discrimination against or harassment of individual patients or groups of patients. So in Jess's case, the doctor was within his rights to refuse to help her, but he would have been very much against his rights not to immediately pass on to somebody else that could. But that's just the way it lies. And it's the same with emergency contraception. These are the two that shout through. I personally, and from my own medical background, I can't think of any two that shine out as brightly as abortion and emergency contraception.
Yeah, same here. So a question for Kaukab. Oh, just quickly, just funny comments that people have made. Someone said, I wonder how many male MPs, wives and mistresses have had an abortion under pressure from them. Then someone else has said, as someone who grew up in the Republic of Ireland, I think it's important to remember that laws that limit abortion limit bodily autonomy for pregnant people and people who could become pregnant in many circumstances. And Nzingha's point about this is about health equity is an important one. So yeah, I agree. And yeah, there aren't that many questions that are directly about Scotland. So maybe I would ask you, Kaukab, why do you think, it seems to me, maybe I've got this wrong, but that the anti-abortion activists are just far more vitriolic and aggressive in Scotland? Well, a bit more. They seem to be ramping up more post-Roe overturning than others. Why do you think that is?
I think she might have gone. I think she might have fallen off the call.
Okay, let's go to another question. Oh, is she back? No. What other question? What can we do to encourage men or boys to take responsibility for their reproductive abilities, since they cause 100% of unwanted pregnancies? Now, who wants to answer that?
I mean, much more needs to be done to couch everything. Fundamentally, the reason that women have less power in society is because we live in a patriarchal norms. And the reason that women are attacked and abused in their homes is because they have less power in society. And for a long, long time, the feminist movement have very much focused on basically cleaning up the mess of a patriarchal society, so creating abortion services that people can access. Myself working in very, very victim focused services around domestic and sexual violence, and that there does need to be a tide turning of public policy that looks to the perpetration of the control of women. And so much of the reason that women end up controlled is because of our reproductive organs. Essentially, it is one of the most fundamental issues of why women end up disenfranchised and disempowered in society. And so that there has been very, very little movement, certainly in violence against women and girls, to really be looking at, I mean, even calling it violence against women and girls, we should call it men's violence against women. But we definitely need much more of a move around having expectations and responsibilities lying, but until it's actually your body, we're never going to cross that Rubicon, I don't think.
Yeah, totally. I've got a question here for Nzingha. What are activists aligning around in the US following Roe v. Wade? What are the ways to resist?
Sure. I think one of the ways is I think activists are educating and informing each other about self-managed abortion. So linking each other to the sites and the places where you can access abortion pills, so you can take them at home. I also think that we are really changing the narrative in the conversation to really understanding that abortion is an issue for folks who belong to multiple intersections. So abortion is for the person who is a CEO at a top Fortune 500 company. An abortion is someone who might be a veterinarian's assistant, right? Abortions can happen to anyone who needs them. There isn't like this typical space or face. And abortions can happen to those who do not identify as cisgender folks, right? It's not just this conversation on women, but trans men, gender non-conforming people as well. I think the huge push right now is understanding that we really need to fund abortion. So in the United States, there are dozens and dozens of abortion funds. I'll name the major ones in the South that I know, which is ARC Southeast and Yellowhammer Fund. And then, of course, I'll shout out my home state, the Missouri Abortion Fund. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. Really, really pushing and understanding that we are helping folks access abortion care by, sending funds to, these organizations that will be able to help individuals and sometimes families be able to get those flight tickets, to get the gas in the car, to get the hotels, right, while they're accessing that care. The other thing I'll say is that there is a huge push as well for doula training. I've been an abortion doula for 5 years, and it's been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. And I think there's been, more and more on Instagram and on Facebook and on Twitter, I'll be like, doula training, doula training, doula training. So that's another thing that I've been seeing is we're linking each other to say, hey, there's a training coming up at the end of the month. They're offering scholarships. Do you want to, click in, join in, so we can have this this environment of comfort around abortion care, because it's not just abortion access. Yes, that's important, but we have to show up for our friends and our family and our comrades who are actually going through the abortion surgeries and the abortion pill process, showing up for them to ensuring that they are taken well care of, that they are affirmed, and that they are validated.
We don't have anything like that here in Nzingha at all, as far as I know. The sort of doula movement, if I were to be perfectly honest, it just makes me think of my mom in the 70s, and it's not like a sort of wide thing in the United Kingdom. So that is brilliant. Well done.
I also just wanted to reflect, and this is something that at BPAS we've sort of moved over the last 10 years while I've been there. And I think that we have really, one of the things that we fell into the trap of as a pro-choice movement, and this also reflects on what Jess was saying earlier, is about almost the gentrification of abortion. And I remember every year we still have abortion stats that come out from the Department of Health with the most, it's just ridiculous the way that they segment. And these are the things we're legally required to report. So is a woman married, living with a partner, widow? So we still have to do that. And I remember every time the abortion stats would come out, and you'd get the call from the Daily Mail, a delightful right-wing newspaper, and you'd go, but don't worry, yes, abortions have gone up, but half of people who have abortions are already mothers, and they're in their 30s and they're in relationships. Like, don't worry about it. And actually but this is the space that we were in because we were constantly defending like the provisions that we had, like don't worry about it. And actually we've really moved past that. And I agree, this isn't about going, you know, you know, somebody just needed to have an abortion so that they could you know, progress with their university PhD. Once you know, there was an expose from a right-wing newspaper, which was, they were scandalized by the fact that we provided an abortion for somebody because part of their justification was that they were about to go on holiday. And absolutely, I think if you want an abortion because you want to go on holiday, you should be able to have one. And these are the things we shouldn't have to wrap it up in these huge justifications. There are those hard cases, but we should also be in a space where we don't have to constantly labor on the fact that, you know, women who have abortions, you know, are doing so for the right reasons.
I'm so sorry to interject, but Kaukab fell off because of her Wi-Fi, I think. So yeah, just a question. I did ask you a question, but then you weren't there, so I'll repeat myself, which was, yeah, why do you think that the anti-abortion folks in Scotland seem to be so kind of aggressive and belligerent, and seems to be a bit more activity in Scotland at the moment post-Roe overturning? Are you there? Oh, you're on mute. I've asked you to unmute. Oh, she doesn't know she's on mute. Hello? You're still on mute. I keep requesting to ask to unmute, but oh no. Can someone else?
I think I'm back. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you've been on mute for ages.
Yeah, I was getting
been there.
It's only the host that could unmute me. Thanks for that question. I'll just sort of get on with it. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, great. I think that I don't know if they are. I mean, we have seen sort of like protests across the world and in America, but I don't think it's a competition. I mean, any kind of protest like that is intimidating. It is harmful to not only people women who are trying to access the services, but also to the people who work in the facilities, who have a right to go about their business and get on with the medical provisions that they want to. And in my constituency, the residential area that is around that is also affected. So I'm very supportive of buffer zones. And I think that what there has been is, so any, you know, as far as I'm concerned personally, it's unacceptable. However, there has been a huge media spotlight on it. And that has brought it to our attention. So in a way that has made us sort of address the situation. And we've got Gillian Mackay's bill on buffer zones that's coming up and is gaining a lot of traction, a lot of support, and supported by, you know, people here, Back Off Scotland. So all these campaigns are there. So yeah, I hope that's helpful.
That's really helpful. Thank you. No, I wasn't saying it's worst in Scotland in the world, but I just meant it seems to be more attention on what's happening in Scotland than the rest of the UK. But yeah, okay, I'm just going to have it's 7:26. So one more question. Okay, this is a good question. It's quite a hard one. Maybe Naomi, you'd raised your hand, so maybe you want to answer this. Are there lessons from how anti-abortion campaigning has shifted the landscape in America that we can learn from here to prevent the same erosion of rights?
Yeah, I just wanted to come back, and I think it's probably somewhat of an answer to that question. I think what we need to do is kind of claim back that radical space. So if you take, like, I'm an abortion doula, but an abortion doula is not does not automatically mean, you know, it's like a middle class thing that, you know, women who are, you know, women who are wealthy hire in order to help them through their abortion or pregnancy and process. As abortion doulas, we are troubleshooters. We are about getting access to abortion for women and pregnant people who have barriers to care. And that is what Lucht Caira It's called our abortion doula program, and we do offer training on it as well. That's what we provide. And the people who come to us through that are people who are refugees, migrants, LGBTQ plus people with disabilities, women and people in coercive control and domestic violence relationships who cannot get access. And I think the importance of reclaiming a radical doula network or a radical abortion care network is that we've always done it. We've always done it before anything was legislated for. And it's about being open about that, as open as the anti-choice lobby are, and acting with confidence and setting up those networks, not just locally, but globally as well.
Thank you so much. Well, we've just got 2 minutes till we end, so I don't think there's time for another question, but thank you, everybody. You've all been amazing, brilliant questions, brilliant panelists. Yeah, I guess I'd just like to end on the point that I think that the ideological debate between, the quite small but very aggressive and if they're anything, they do seem to be quite hardworking. I'll give them that. The anti-abortion lobby, the anti-abortion activists, who are, very extreme. A lot of them think that abortion is the devil's work. They link it to Satanism. They're anti-birth control. They often are very anti-LGBT. They're often they've got very, very bigoted views. So it's not like this anti-abortion view sits in a vacuum. But yeah, I do think it is a different beast to a lot of other political debates, because the protesters, they're not protesting against the government. They're not protesting against decision makers. They're targeting, women who could be going through what for some might be, one of the most vulnerable times in their lives. Some, they might be getting an abortion, they want their child, but they can't because of a fatal fetal abnormality. So yeah, there's lots and lots of reasons why people get abortions. And so to be willing to harass someone at that time does show, a real, something quite frightening and intimidating about it all. But I think, and it's not an issue where you're going to find a middle ground, really. It's going to be hard to, because on one side, you've got the anti-abortion lobby who think abortion is murder and think that, women are committing murder. And then on the other side, you've got the overwhelming majority who don't share this view. But yeah, just to go back to America, as I'm sure you all know, it will be Black women among those hardest hit by the decision, as statistically they are far more likely to die of pregnancy complications in America. They're also more likely to access abortion care in the first place. They're far more likely to be impoverished, and they're also far more likely to live in states where abortion is set to be banned. The data continuously shows banning abortion does not stop women getting pregnancies terminated. Instead, it just pushes them to have dangerous backstreet abortions. Such procedures are incredibly dangerous. 47,000 women in the world die every single year as a consequence of getting an unsafe abortion, while 5 million women are estimated to have to go to hospital for bleeding, for an infection or some other, highly dangerous health issue. So yeah, it will be Black, Latino, Indigenous people, the LGBT community, and those working in poorly paid, precarious jobs, or living in rural areas in America, who are going to, feel the repercussions of Roe v. Wade being overturned the hardest. And things were actually really bad before the overturning, but obviously, they are, and they will continue to get a lot worse. But at least there is a big resistance on the plus side. So thank you, everybody.